left side of the back of his neck.
Would using that as a demonstrative help to illustrate that on a styrofoam head?
Okay.
Council was in Michael. 18 years to
For you much.
Okay. Mr. McDougall, approaching with what has been labeled as Broward Medical Examiner's Office 18-3118.
Correct.
Is that consistent with the Medical Examiner's Office number that was assigned for the autopsy of Anthony Williams?
It is.
Okay. Prior to coming into court today, did you have an opportunity to place markings on this styrofoam head to approximate the locations of the wounds on Mr. Williams?
I did.
And would this help and assist in demonstrating to the jury where those wounds were in position on those photographs?
It will show the wound path as well.
Okay. So, Your Honor, this point, the state would ask the witness to use the demonstrative.
Yes. Again, ladies and gentlemen, this is a demonstrative exhibit. It's not in evidence at this time. The testimony is what the witness says. The demonstrative is used basically to assist the witness in explaining or illustrating her testimony. As I said, the testimony of the witness is the evidence. This demonstrative is not to be considered by you as evidence in the case unless it's later received in evidence. Only items that are actually received in evidence would be going back with you to the jury room during deliberations. Proceed.
And so, Dr. McDougall, could be kind enough to show where on that head would be entrance wound A?
So the approximate position of that entrance wound is about right here.
And you said this was what type of gunshot wound?
This is a perforating gunshot wound, which means I have an entrance and an exit.
And where was that exit?
The exit is on the right temporal scalp.
And how is, I'm going to skip ahead to that exit, which is E.
That's correct.
Okay. And so is E shown on there?
The approximate location of the exit wound on this demonstrative is about right there.
Okay. For the wounds A to E, as labeled on the photos, was that wound fatal?
It is a fatal wound, yes.
Okay. What injuries were associated with the wound track of A to E?
So that projectile goes through the scalp, the skull, the dura mater, the brain. There is subgaleal, subdural, and subarachnoid hemorrhage and multiple fractures of the bones of the skull.
Okay, so a lot of medical terms. Let's slow down and define them. So what is a subgaleal hemorrhage?
So your scalp, right, your head, the skin is on your head. When you reflect it back, right, the underside of that is called the galea. Okay, so if you have hemorrhage in the underside of the skin on your head, that's a subgaleal hemorrhage. When you, inside your head is your brain. Okay, what you have a cover on your brain that is called dura mater. Okay, so you have your brain, you have this dura mater, and then your skull. All right, so if I have subdural hemorrhage, sub means underneath, I have blood between the brain and the dura. Subarachnoid hemorrhage, the arachnoid is a very fine membrane that covers the brain, and that is hemorrhage in that space. So there are different spaces within the cranial cavity where blood collects with injury.
And so you said hemorrhage. If you could just make sure that that word is defined in your context as a forensic pathologist.
So hemorrhage means there's bleeding. Okay, a bruise. If you ever had a bruise, that's hemorrhage underneath your skin, like after you bump into something or have some sort of trauma.
Okay. So I want to go back to wound A. So I'm going to go back to that photo. On A, is there an abrasion margin?
There's a very small abrasion margin around that wound.
And is it concentric?
It is.
And what does that mean?
It means it's all the way, it's around the whole thing as opposed to a marginal abrasion, which we saw before, which is just on one part of the entrance wound. This abrasion encompasses the whole entrance wound.
The wound track or pattern, were there fragments that were recovered along this wound track?
There were.
Joint counsel what's been previously marked as stage quadruple B. Dr. McDougall, prior to coming into court today, did you have the opportunity to review the items inside states quadruple B outside the presence of the jury?
I did.
Do you recognize what is in there?
I do.
What is it?
Those are the projectile fragments that were collected at the autopsy.
And are they in the same or substantially same condition as when they were collected?
They are.
They have your initial on the evidence tape on the outside.
They do.
Here at this time, the state would request to move states quadruple B in as state 74.
Is there any objection?
No, sir.
It'll be admitted.
States quadruple B will be marked states 74.
So, Dr. McDougall, in terms of this particular entrance wound, how can you tell this is the entrance versus site E?
Because it has an abrasion margin, okay, abrasions are usually only associated with entrance wounds. Exit wounds are more commonly lacerated. And when we look at wound E, we'll see that it's a lacerated defect.
In terms of any sort of stippling, did you note that on this particular injury?
So I called the range of fire on this case indeterminate. Okay? There are, can you go out?
Sure.
I just want to show. So, you know, indeterminate does not mean distant. Indeterminate means I don't know. So, you know, you could say that might be stipple, that little defect right there. That might be stipple, but that's right around a hair follicle. And if you look over here, there are areas
Very interesting.
where you can tell there's scarring. So when you look at the nape of the neck, where gentlemen get shaved, you get ingrown hairs, and you can have folliculitis, it's called. I'm not going to say this is intermediate. With 3, maybe 4 ditzels, I call them, that might be so. I actually took a microscopic section of one of these to try to see if I could see any evidence of gunshot residue, gunpowder, stipple, and the one section that I took was basically the epidermis, which is the top layer of your skin, was normal, and there was some blood underneath it. So I did not get to see what I wanted to see, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't there. It just wasn't in the section that I took.
Without a pattern, can you make any sort of medical opinion as to range of fire?
I will not,
Why did she say it like that?
based on 1 or 2, I call them ditzels, say that for sure is intermediate.
In terms of this particular injury, was the individual alive when it was inflicted?
Yes,
How can you tell that?
from the hemorrhage.
Is there any sort of other things that would help and assist you in demonstrating the difference between